Nothing but the same for me. Heart broken into where my brain should be. Wait for me. Don't leave without a second glance. Not again. Oh, what a shame, what a shame. Oh, what a shame, what a shame. Oh, what a shame, what a shame. God's gone, God's gone, God's gone. God's gone, God's gone, God's gone. For once, can you listen? Is that too much to ask for? Before the seasons change, before it gets cold, can you at least pretend? Can you at least pretend? Life of a pessimist, only a fool believes there is a God in the sky who listens to the plea of his child. How could he leave us all alone? Leave us all alone. How could he leave us all alone? Leave us all alone. Oh, what a shame, what a shame. Oh, what a shame, what a shame. Oh, what a shame, what a shame. God's gone, God's gone, God's gone. God's gone, God's gone, God's gone. For once, can you listen? Is that too much to ask for? Before the seasons change, before it gets cold, can you at least pretend? Can you at least pretend?
Is that too much to ask for? Before the seasons change, before it gets cold, can you at least pretend? Can you at least pretend?
Hello. Well, I say hello like I'm on the phone. Hey, y'all. Let me see. How do I? Okay, hold on, y'all. Give me a second. Y'all know I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so anybody who is here, thank you for coming by, and anybody who comes through later, I will greatly appreciate it. This I don't intend for this to be a long live. I don't know why this was on my mind today. I was actually going to talk about something else today, but I don't know. This is what was on my mind most recently, so I just wanted to talk about something else. So I am going to do some more videos on the topic of empiricism and science, the scientific method, logic, things like that. But I just kind of wanted to just talk about it a little bit briefly. Because I just feel like things are getting out of hand. So I remember a few weeks ago, I saw this post on X. Now I feel like it's not really about what the post was about, what the topic was about, but there was a comment that really spoke to me. So, but this guy, he said something like, he said, "Thank God I'm too African for this kind of fun." And so somebody responded and said, quote, "I come from a heavily superstitious, fearful race. Cool story." So, he wrote it as if he was writing in the perspective of the black guy who said basically, I'm too African for this kind of fun. So hey Brownie, thank you for coming by, girl. So but I thought about that. I was like, as I'm not even gonna make this video about race, but I do think in our community, we do put a lot of weight on superstition and like feeling and intuition and things like that, and we don't have enough focus on education and empiricism. So I want to talk briefly about what empiricism is. um you know what, for the longest time I just didn't know the word for it, like for the idea, but it just basically means like something being provable, or like or like the idea that knowledge comes from our five senses. So that would be seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, you know whatever the case, but not from like within, you know what I mean? So not something that somebody told you, or not something that you feel, or you know what I mean. Just the idea of like us looking outside of ourselves at evidence, and in our search for truth, instead of just accepting things without um without any type of merit. So once again, measurable evidence. Yes, Brownie. So so I'll get started really quick. And like I said, this isn't going to be a long video, because at first it was going to be a rant, but I was like, I don't even have the energy for that tonight. So now this video isn't about religion, but you can put religion in the category of the kind of things that I'm talking about. But I'm just speaking in general, like things like religion, astrology, tarot readings, psychics, energy healing, stuff like that. Let me see what some other examples. Yeah, and like I say, y'all, this was kind of out the blue, so it might be a little, okay, let me see. All right. Let me see. I'm sorry, yo. Okay, let me just Google some more examples of pseudoscience. Examples of pseudoscience. All right. So, astrology, I said astrology, the belief that the positions of star. Hey Femi, good to see you. I've been checking out some of your stuff. Okay, but astrology is the belief that the positions of the stars and planets influence human behavior and destiny despite failing scientific tests. So, I mean, maybe I'll speak briefly like on each concept. So astrology is, I guess it's a system that was invented or created a long time ago. But the issue with astrology is that like there is no means like scientifically by which astrology could be a real thing. It's not something that you can test. It's not something that you can prove. It's just something that people heard, and then they say, oh, in my experience, this is true, or this works. I hear a lot of stuff about, I'm an Aries, and I hear a lot of stuff about Aries that seems true, but then I hear a lot of stuff that's not true, So it's what makes it unscientific is the fact that there is no way to test it. It's only based on like an ancient system that people have adopted. There's no burden of proof. There's no standard of proof. There's no way to test it. There's no way to prove it wrong or right. So yeah. Homeopathy, I guess, or homeopathy, a system of alternative medicine claiming that highly diluted substances can trigger the body to heal itself, which contradicts fundamental chemical and physical principles. So I'm not even gonna get into that. Okay, phrenology, the pseudoscientific practice of assessing a person's character or personality traits from the shape and measurements of their skull. All right, so let's see, get some more examples. Okay, reflexology, the belief that applying pressure to specific points on the feet, hands, or ears cures diseases in completely different organs. Biorhythms, the idea that human lives are governed by mathematical, biological cycles, physical, emotional, intellectual, starting at birth. Flat Earth theory, the belief that the Earth is a flat disk, rejecting hundreds of years of satellite imagery and physics data. Lunar effect, the persistent claim that full moons cause a spike in psychiatric admissions, crimes, and births, which statistical studies consistently disprove. Okay, so I'm not going to read too much, but the point is that um, pseudoscience, these are ideas that persist, like regardless of the fact that either there's no proof or there's a lot of proof to the contrary, but people still choose to believe it, and they don't actually have any logical or scientific basis to believe it. So the thing about truth, okay, so truth survives evidence. So I'm not sure, like I've never looked into what the argument for like a flat earth would be, but I mean, what are reasons we know that the earth is flat, just off the top of my head? Okay, so we see all the other bodies in the solar system and in the observable universe, and they are all round. We see that they rotate. um uh we have tides and stuff like that from the moon, all kind of stuff. We have day and night, or whatever. I'm not sure exactly like all the evidence, but my point is, like, I know that there are people that still subscribe to the flat earth theory, and it's not necessarily just for religious reasons. I'm not sure what the reasons are, but the thing is, these people, they persist in this belief despite like any form of evidence. I'm not sure. I never had an actual conversation with any of them, but I mean, I can't imagine that these people have really given it much thought. I don't know. But anyway, I feel like I'm rambling already, but I'm gonna try to do better. Okay, try to make this a little bit better. All right, so truth survives evidence. So that's another thing. I feel like people, I don't know. I think sometimes people feel like, okay, there are two realms like of existence, maybe the physical existence that is provable by science, and then a spiritual existence. I don't I, I'm not gonna well, I don't believe that, but the thing is, it's not even about like whether it's this is the thing. Let's just say that there is a spiritual side to existence. Hi, True Bleed. Thank you for coming through. Um, how can we test that? How can we measure that? How can we detect that? What means, like, what kind of experiment or test would you perform in order to confirm that? Thank you. Thank you, Femi. I appreciate that because this is super like impromptu. So now, and like I said, I'm not gonna get too deep into this, but our brains are actually like designed to find patterns and to sense danger. So our brains are designed to be superstitious. Our brains are great at inventing explanations. Like, that's one thing that our brains love to do, is invent explanations. But that doesn't mean that our brains are necessarily good at finding truth. I think the finding truth part is something that we have to be more conscious about and working for. So the difference between science and pseudoscience. Okay, science asks, how can I prove myself wrong? And the scientific method, just to touch on that briefly, and y'all don't quote me on anything I'm saying. This is just a very brief talk, but the scientific method, just to let me just look it up just to try to be halfway right. Okay, so the core steps: you make an observation. So at the beginning, when I first started talking, I was talking about empiricism. So you make an observation. That means you see something, something that you observe with your senses. You notice something in the natural or physical world that sparks curiosity and warrants an explanation. So, okay, so your observation leads to a question. Formulate a specific question about the observation, such as, why does this happen? What factors influence it? Okay, conduct research. Now, this is important right here. Gather existing information about the topic to understand what is already known. Okay. All right. Learn about it. Form a hypothesis. Propose a testable educated guess or explanation. This is often structured as an if-then statement. Okay, so there's some keywords here. Testable. So, okay, so if you say, for example, that there's something called Reiki, and it's some, I'm trying to be not to be crass in this video, but like Reiki healing is something I just found out about like a few months ago. But basically, like the practitioner, they kind of like wave their hands over you and massage you, and it's supposed to like release all kinds of trauma and stuff like that. So let's just say, okay, how let's just say if you were doing an experiment, how could you prove that this is something that works? Like, how do you prove that? For example, I'm just throwing this out there. Like, first thing you would have to do is you would have to, do an experiment. You would have to set up different scenarios where the only thing that would be different is one person would be experiencing Reiki healing and then the other person would not. So and everything else would have to be the same. And I'm only getting into that just to say that in order to call something evidence or proof, there are specific requirements. So if more than one thing is changing when you comparing something, you're not going to exactly know what it is that caused the change. So that's why in an experiment, you have to control pretty much every factor except for the factor that you're testing. That is the only thing that can be different, because if you are experiencing a difference, then you would have to know, hey, this is the reason. And then as far as being testable, it would have to be something that you can test. You know what, True Bleed? I think people need to use Google more, because I think the problem is they're not using it. So for instance, like, how can you test that Aries have more fiery personalities? I know, True Bleed, but yeah, I'm just saying, like, I honestly think people need to use Google more. But yeah, how do you test that an Aries has a more fiery or argumentative personality? Like, how do you test that? Is that, so when people say things like that, is that based on like reality, or is that just based on like confirmation bias? How do you test that ghosts exist? How do you test that your ancestors are speaking to you? How do you test that God is speaking to you? How do you test that energy is being healed, or that whatever spell that you're doing is working? How do you test that? Like, can somebody prove that? It's just something that's easy to say. So yeah, those are the two important things you have to keep in mind, that you have to propose a testable guess or explanation. It has to be able to be proven right or wrong. If you can't, like, if it's something like, okay, God existing, you can't prove that right, you can't prove that wrong. So that's not a testable hypothesis. Therefore, any statement about like God is not within the realm of science or spirits or ghosts. Yeah. If it's something that cannot be measured, if it cannot be tested, it cannot be observed, recorded, that means it's not within the realm of science. So let's just say you believe that. Okay, fine. That's fine. People can believe what they want, but it's one thing to believe something, and then it's another thing to purport it as being truthful. So yeah. So design and run an experiment. Test the hypothesis through a controlled experiment. This requires isolating variables so that only one factor is changed at a time. Okay, so that's pretty much what I just said, because yes, you do have to control an experiment, and what's meant by that is you're going to keep all the conditions the same except for the condition that you're testing. You don't want to be testing one thing and then you're finding a difference, but you don't actually know if the difference is caused by what you're testing or another thing that is different amongst the different scenarios that you're testing. So experiments do have to be organized in order for you to be able to isolate like what's causing any changes that you observe. Okay, so analyze data. Review the results using statistical or mathematical analysis to identify meaningful patterns. Okay, so when they talk about meaningful patterns, so this is the thing about science or mathematics, or just performing experiments. What you were trying to do in this process of science is distance yourself emotionally from whatever the outcome is going to be. So that means that, let's just say if somebody says, oh, March Aries are this way, but April Aries are that way, what is that based on? That's based on their anecdotal experience. And then that means that it could be confirmation bias. It could just be limited to the people that they actually know. You know what I mean? It could be any number of things. So that's not reliable evidence. But so if you're using like statistical or mathematical analysis, those methods, like those processes, they are standardized. So that means that once you put in all your data, it's going to spit out a number. It's going to spit out information that lets you know, like, hey, based on what the research that you did, and if you want this amount of certainty, there is this much of a probability that the differences that you observing are not due to chance or something like that. So just to, hopefully that made sense, but just to try to like repeat it or say it in a different way, what you're doing in the process of like the mathematical analysis or the statistical analysis is you are quantifying whatever research that you did. So it's not, oh, I talked to somebody and they told me this. Oh, I felt like this. Oh, God told me this. I have this relationship with him. And oh, this person did a reading and it was on point. You're removing yourself, you're distancing yourself from whatever the outcome is, and you are quantifying it in mathematical terms. And it's based on what actually happened. Not how you felt, not who you talked to. And then obviously you have to involve enough people or test it enough times to know that like you can draw a conclusion based on whatever your result was. Okay, so which brings me to my next point. Okay, drawing a conclusion. Determine whether the evidence supports or rejects the hypothesis. And like I said, like the amount of evidence that you would need, I'm not, I'm not a statistician. I took statistics before, but they have like, I'm not going to be able to think of the terms, but basically like you can decide how sure you want to be about something, and then, put in the numbers, and then it'll tell you, okay, well, yeah, this is statistically significant, or, whatever difference you're seeing is statistically significant. Because once again, you can observe differences that may just fall within the realm of like chance, but you can kind of control for all those things just so that, once you get the bigger picture, like what you're actually looking at. So, okay. So, science asks, how can I prove myself wrong? So this goes along with what I was saying about like not being emotionally invested in like whatever the outcome is going to be, just being open. Because like in order for you to find truth, honestly, I think that you would have to be in search of truth. And in order to like honestly be in search of truth, you would have to be willing to be wrong. You see what I mean? So if you're not willing to be wrong, then how are you in search of truth? No, it just sounds like you just want to be right about whatever you're talking about because of your ego or because it comforts you or something like that. Finding out that you're wrong is actually finding out that you're getting closer to what the truth is. You see what I mean? So once you find out that you're wrong, you're actually closer to the truth than you were before when you thought that the incorrect thing was right. And so when people say that science changes, okay, let me just keep going. All right. Science asks, how can I prove myself wrong? Pseudoscience asks, how can I keep believing this no matter what? I'm going to repeat that again. Science asks, how can I prove myself wrong? Pseudoscience asks, how can I keep believing this no matter what? So I talked about this a while ago. I think it was on Candy's panel, but the point of science is not to prove that something is right, because something is right until it's disproven. The point of science is to disprove ideas, so you can just narrow it down further and further and further. And that's why they say scientific theory. Hey, Miss Queen Sunkiss. Not because a theory is something they just made up. No, the theory actually has a lot of evidence supporting it. But because it's science, science is always open to the fact that something can change and something can be proven wrong, and that's not a flaw in the process of science. So when people say, "Oh, that's just a theory," um, and or that, "Oh, well, they always think they know this, then they find out something else," that, like I said, if you want to get closer to the truth, you have to accept that you're not going to always be right. If you, let's just say, for instance, religion, not to be attacking religion or anything like that, but the fact that, like, religion doesn't change when you learn more information, that doesn't make it better. You know what I mean? So, like, you can't, like, so let's just say, if you say, well, God's word stays the same, but science changes. You know, the facts that we know through science changes, but God's word stays the same. Okay, so what is more rational, or what is more reliable? Let's just say you're on Google. We were talking about Google a few minutes ago. Would you want to be using Google from 2003, or would you want to be using Google from 2026? Why would you want to be consulting outdated information? Or let's just say, if you are working on let's just say you're writing an encyclopedia or something. So if you found out something new today, are you going to say, well, we're just going to keep whatever we had like 40 years ago, just because, like, you know what I mean? Like, the fact that just the fact that a conclusion can change with new information, that is actually a lot more rational, and a lot more trustworthy, because, like I said, the whole goal of science is to get closer to the truth. It's not to the whole purpose of science is not to reassure you. You know, it's not to make you feel better. It's not to feed your ego, nothing like that. And let's just say, for instance, if you're debating somebody, once you realize that, hey, this person is not that you even want to change their minds. People have a right to believe what they want to believe. But if you get to the point where a person is not considering new information, if a person is not incorporating new information into the argument, that's how you know that you're wasting your time. Like, okay, well, that's like when let's just say your phone breaks and it's not taking any more updates. It's just going to stay like that. It's going to be left behind. So that was just a roundabout way of me saying that science is gonna always be, well, science stays the same, but our knowledge is always going to change. Our knowledge is always going to improve as we learn more, and that is the good thing about science. And just the fact that a lot of these other systems do not change, that lets you know that they're not based on maintaining truth or finding truth. So yeah, because if, for example, not to keep coming down on religion, but let's just say if the Bible says that the earth is 5,000 years old, and somebody that is practicing that religion, it doesn't matter how much evidence you show them or how you explain how this works, carbon dating, or like the layers of rock and, you know, fossils and things like that. And did I say carbon dating? Yeah, just like radioactivity, isotopes and all that. If they hear all that, or they're able to learn all that, and they still are determined to say that the earth is only 5,000 years old, that's not like that's not a rational person. So yeah, so just long story short, information not changing does not mean it's correct. Okay, so all right. A scientific claim makes testable predictions. It can be falsified, and it changes when evidence changes. Okay, I kind of just went over that, but so scientific claims, they make testable predictions. So that means that let's just say, okay, I want to test whether, like, let's just say a plant grows better either through a window or in direct sunlight, so I can actually measure the plant. I can measure the rate of growth. I can use I can put one plant outside, or I can use different kinds of windows, for another plant to test like how much the window affects how much the plant is going to grow, blah blah. I can do that with many different plants so that I can come out with an average, things like that. But if somebody says, okay, well, I'm going to do like a reading, you know, uh and this is what I think, how do you test that? You know, how do you test that? Or if somebody says, you know, I don't know, like you can communicate with people that are on the other side. Like how do you test that? Who's all eyes should be able to see that. If it's the truth, then anybody should have access to that information. It shouldn't have to come through a vessel. And let's just say hypothetically, right? If a person is able to like do psychic stuff, let's just say that's true, we still wouldn't know. That's not something that we can prove. That's not within the realm of science. So in my opinion, it's not real. But regardless of whether I think it's real or not, what everybody can agree on is that it is not testable. It is not within the realm of science. Okay, so can be falsified. That means that can be disproven. Like I said, you cannot prove that there are no ghosts. There could be a ghost sitting right behind me right now, like laughing at me, putting up the peace sign behind my head. I would never know. So that means if anybody says, hey, ghosts exist, how are they going to prove it? What are they going to tell you, that they saw a ghost? Like, okay, unless everybody can see the ghost and we can prove that it's a ghost and it's not something else, then talking about the supernatural is not within the realm of science. So okay, so and a scientific claim changes when evidence changes. So at one point, people thought the Earth was the center of the solar system or the center of the universe. And that made sense based on the information that they had back then. But, once people started developing mathematics and started tracking the stars, and then they observed, okay, well, everything else around us is round. Everything around us is moving. We're seeing other objects moving around each other. They guessed, okay, well, maybe we're not the center of the solar system. They thought of all the reasons why that wouldn't make sense. And so once they were able to, go out into space or whatever the case may be, they found out that they were actually right. Okay, so but if somebody just wants to believe that the Earth is flat, then it whatever kind of mathematics that anybody is using to track the movement of the stars, or like the time it takes for this to go here or there, to determine that other objects are also moving in relation to each other, not just around us. If somebody wants to ignore all that information, then you can't help them, because like I said, your phone doesn't just stay. Your phone is not the same phone that you bought 4 months ago. It gets updates every now and then. It should. Okay, so a pseudoscientific claim always has an excuse. It can't really fail, and it moves the goalposts. Okay, so always has an excuse. Let's just say, I hate to keep talking about religion because it's gonna sound like I'm like picking on religion, but always has an excuse. Let's just say, God works in mysterious ways, or if it's in his will, things like that. Just basically giving it an out. Okay, well, we're gonna give, I don't want to say God, but we're going to give our religious system an out, basically a back door that it can sneak out of when we don't get our way. But the thing about science is, if you keep all the conditions the same, like you're supposed to get the same result every time. That's like, okay, if I use some kind of machine or whatever to throw a ball across a football field, of course, one ball might go farther than another. But why would that be? Because of the wind or something like that. But if we're doing that in a vacuum where there is no wind, you should get the same result every time, because the world has physical laws. It's not based on chance. It's based on physics. So there would be no such thing as doing the same thing and getting different results. So that's also why, like, let's just say some people's bodies react to medicine. Some people's bodies, might react in a different way, but that's just because everybody has like different genetics, basically, so, or, they have a different lifestyle, they, have a different medical history and things like that. But it wouldn't just be because it happens like this sometimes and sometimes it doesn't happen like this. And until they find out, all they can do is create a hypothesis that they test, or they just have to say, I don't know. We don't know what causes this. We don't yet know why this is. It doesn't mean it's a curse, it doesn't mean whatever. You just don't know. Nothing's wrong with admitting that you don't know something. Okay, so education teaches us how to think. And when I say how to think, I mean like it teaches us how to evaluate claims. So it's not about just like memorizing stats, memorizing facts. That's not what education is about. That's more like training, I don't even want to say indoctrination, because indoctrination, that sounds bad. But what I'm saying is like the whole point of education is to allow you to, number one, go out and seek new knowledge. Hey, Lena, thank you for coming through. As always, you're the best. But yeah, the purpose of education is not just to teach you facts, but also like when you go out into the world, you'll be able to evaluate new information and decide if it makes sense. You'll be one of those people that can actually create knowledge, by, contributing to whatever your field is. So it's not just about like, education is not just about being a repository for like facts or for other people's work. You're more than a vessel. You're going to be more like a conduit, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's going to be more like a two-way street, or information is going to actually come through you, or you're going to be able to create information. It's not just about learning random things. So education, it will help you to avoid like logical fallacies. That's something I notice a lot of people have trouble with. I want to do I don't want to say show, whatever, where I talk about logical fallacies, because that's something people have issues with. Cognitive biases, that's another big one. So let me see, just to give y'all some examples, like, okay, of a logical fallacy. Example, just because I don't really feel like thinking right now. Okay, false dilemma. How about this? Yes, Lena, it helps you think beyond what you are taught. And that's the whole point, because I'm not even gonna get started. All right, so I'm gonna make that a separate show. I'm not gonna keep talking about religion. I'm not gonna do it. All right, so false dilemma: presenting a situation as only having two options when other alternatives exist. For example, like, you are either with us or you are terrorists. And think about that. Like, that's a real scenario that they just gave, because that gets into like nationalism and propaganda and things like that, and just how you influence less educated people to be prejudiced, or just to not be open-minded, saying something like that. Well, they're not with us, they must be against us. Oh, they're terrorists, you know what I mean? And that's how people are controlled, just using emotion instead of using facts or using logic. Okay, so cognitive biases. Let me just see if example that. Let's see. Okay, we all know confirmation bias, favoring information that confirms existing beliefs while ignoring contradicting evidence. For example, only reading news articles that agree with your political views. So that goes along with what I was saying earlier about how people tend to shut out information intentionally, and that is something that is very anti-science. That is against the spirit of science, because the whole point of science and learning is to get closer to truth. It's not to prove that you're right about something. Okay, availability heuristic: overestimating the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. For example, fearing a shark attack after watching a scary movie despite the statistical rarity. All right, that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, negativity bias: giving more psychological weight to bad experiences than to good ones, such as obsessing over one piece of critical feedback at work despite receiving 10 compliments. Halo effect. I actually talked about the halo effect the last time I was live. Okay, that's allowing an impression of a person in one area to influence opinion of them in another area, such as assuming an attractive celebrity is also highly intelligent and generous. And these are things that we are susceptible to as human beings. That's why it's important to be aware of them, because like you have to know your own limitations, and that's the thing about learning, and that's the thing about um advancing and just gaining more knowledge. uh what you what you mean, Femi? You talking about like being scared to like do something like that, which goes along with what I was saying. So let me just go back to what I was saying. I was reading a comment on X, and it just made, this is kind of what inspired this live today. But somebody said, okay, so this this was in response to that bungee jumping accident that happened like a few weeks ago. So somebody said, "Thank God I'm too African for this kind of fun." And so somebody responded to that and said, quote, "I come from a heavily superstitious, fearful race." Cool story. So, what he was saying, I guess what he was saying, now I would never go bungee jumping. I'm not gonna lie. Certain things I'm just not gonna do. But what he said, I think what the guy was getting at is like he's bragging about like limiting your experience due to whatever your background is. And um when you limit risk, you can limit risky activities, but you also limiting like whatever like good can come out of it. So I think that's kind of like what he's saying, like that the guy basically he has a negative opinion now of bungee jumping, even though what happened, was, I guess, an accident. It's rare, right? It has, if all the protocols were followed, it would not have happened. And a lot of people go bungee jumping and they find it to be a wonderful experience. So saying you're too African to experience that, that's not a good thing. You know what I mean? So once again, like I said, the person responded and said, "I come from a heavily superstitious, fearful race." All right, so uh okay, evaluating evidence. Um Very true, Lena. So evaluating evidence, that's another thing. So like I said, if somebody says, okay, male Aries are like this, but female Aries are like this, March Aries are like this, but April Aries are like this, what is your evidence? Like, how, somebody explain to me, what can I consult, what study can I consult to say that this is true? I'm gonna use this example. And I think this person is smart in a lot of ways, but I think she's dumb in a lot of ways too. I'm not even gonna say who it is, but there's a person that I watch, and just sometimes she just get on some real dumb stuff. And an example of what I mean is let's just say using Chat GPT to pull tarot cards. I would have never thought somebody could be that remedial, because it's like it's like stupid times stupid. Okay, so I already, tarot cards is already some BS, but the fact that you're asking Chat GPT to ask the Oracle something, and then you arguing with people in the chat based on them not agreeing with it. So like if somebody says, okay, well, this is the situation, blah blah. So they were talking about Michael Jackson. So this person said, oh well, Joe Jackson was raised in the South. Oh, I think he loved his son, but that's just how he was raised, blah blah. So the person responded, whose show it was, and said, well, the Oracle ChatGPT didn't say anything about him loving his son. How would ChatGPT know if? And I'm not making any statement on whether Joe Jackson loved his son. I'm just using an example. How would ChatGPT know if Joe Jackson loved his son? This person asked ChatGPT to ask the Oracle if Joe Jackson loved his son, or what was his relationship with his kids, and she used what ChatGPT said. And the thing is, you know what, Lena? I asked ChatGPT about that, and ChatGPT said that basically that this person was misusing ChatGPT. ChatGPT is not supposed to work like that. So I guess that's like a flaw in ChatGPT, because ChatGPT, like, it kind of tries to please you, but I'm pretty sure that the thing, I don't even know. Like, I could find what ChatGPT says about that, but maybe I'll do that in a little bit. But I definitely did ask about that. But it said that that person is misusing ChatGPT. That's like, you could put it like this. At no point in the course of me using ChatGPT has it told me to do anything dangerous, but I know that it tells some people to do dangerous things. But that, once again, you will have to be communicating with ChatGPT in a certain way in order for that to even come up. So, but what I'm the point I'm trying to make is this woman said that, oh well, no, there's no evidence that he loves his son. The Oracle didn't say anything about Joe Jackson loving his son, and I'm just saying, okay, so this person is saying that Chat GPT's response to a question that's meant for the Oracle is going to be this person's evidence as to whether Joe Jackson. It's just remedial. It's like, how does that even happen? But this person swears up and down that all their beliefs are evidence based, but yet this person believes in astrology. She believes in tarot, all kind of BS. But in her mind, she's a logical, rational person, and she only operates within the realm of like reason and evidence. So, but that just goes along with cognitive biases. So, all right. So yeah, that was my example for evaluating evidence, because like I know for a fact that me asking ChatGPT about somebody's personal feelings is not a that's not a form of evidence. I mean, I feel like I shouldn't have to explain why, but hey. All right, so probability. I think they're mentioning probability just based on the fact that like I said, bungee jumping. Now, once again, I would never go bungee jumping, but at the same time, just because we saw a news story about a fatal accident that occurred with bungee jumping, that doesn't mean that bungee jumping itself is dangerous when done properly. So, or for example, like I know I don't really like flying, but definitely in my former job I had to travel a lot. I did not enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like, I just it wasn't, it just wasn't that bad, but at the same time it's just like but I know that the reason why I feel that way is because of like the media, or certain incidents that were heavily publicized, because nobody writes news stories about regular plane rides, that go as planned. That's not going to be a news story. But when something does happen, that what every newspaper is writing about it. So that's definitely going to affect how you look at a certain situation and how you assess risk. So that's important. When you're assessing information, you have to understand and acknowledge probability. And so statistics, like I said, that's just the process of like determining like let me just explain it in my way, then I'm gonna see what Google says. So statistics is like a way of explaining something and knowing that like the conclusions that you're drawing is valid. Statistics definition. Statistics is the branch of mathematics that deals with the collection, analysis, interpretation, and presentation of data. Its primary purpose is to make sense of raw data, reveal underlying patterns, and inform better decision making. Okay, so yeah, I think that's pretty much what I said. It turns what your observations are into like usable information, and it lets you know that whether the conclusion that you're drawing based on your observations is reasonable. So okay. And the scientific method. We went over the scientific method already. Education teaches you about the scientific method, and the scientific method is all of these things that I just listed: knowing about logical fallacies and cognitive biases, knowing how to evaluate evidence, knowing about probability, statistics, and the scientific method. These are all ways of obtaining new information and also screening information. You don't want to just take everything that comes your way. You need to be able to know like what to reject, what to throw back. Okay, so why does pseudoscience survive? Pseudoscience survives because people like simple answers. A lot of people don't like not knowing. Like there are things like, I consider myself a smart person. I'm not gonna say I'm a genius, but at the same time, I love to learn. But obviously there are things that I have to admit that I just don't know. Like I don't know how the universe came into existence. I don't know. Like I don't know why I'm a human instead of a cat. Like I don't know. Like I guess maybe I kind of know the answer to that, and that's but anyway, but there are things that we don't know. We don't know if there's other life in the universe. I think there is, but what one thing ChatGPT said to me, but sidebar, one thing ChatGPT said to me about that, because I said that I'm sure that there are a lot of planets with life. When you think about how many planets that there are, and how many planets there have to be that are in the habitable zone. Thank you, Femi. I appreciate that. But guess what ChatGPT said? ChatGPT said we can't really say that that it's likely for there to be life elsewhere in the universe, because the thing is this: we don't know the chances of life existing. All we know is that there's life here. We don't know like that, like, okay, a few solar systems over, there's another planet with life. We don't know that. We are literally the only example that we know of life in the universe. Or let's just say complex life in the universe. So we don't know if there's 10 in every galaxy, 10 planets like this in every galaxy, or thousands. You know what I mean? We don't know. So just because, and that's kind of an example of what I was talking about, like logical fallacies or cognitive biases. They mentioned heuristics, us using the information that we have available to generalize and draw conclusions. You can't make it. The only conclusion that you can draw based on the fact that there's intelligent life here is that there is intelligent life here, and that intelligent life exists. But you can't make any guess about how common it is in the universe, because we only know of one example of intelligent life existing. So so anyway, I thought that was interesting. So yeah, like I said, people like simple answers. People like hope. Pseudoscience gives people hope, and more control, like a sense of control over their lives. So like horoscopes, or astrology, it can at least make a person feel grounded, like, or make them feel like they understand a situation when they feel lost. Okay, let's just say they read a horoscope and now they feel like they understand somebody better. It doesn't have to be true, but it still makes them feel better. So that's why they're not going to give up astrology, or whatever. Or if, let's just say, you use gemstones or chakra, all that kind of stuff. If you have like conditioned yourself to the point that you have a positive emotional reaction to whatever ritual it is that you're doing, that literally has nothing to do with science. That's what they call like the placebo effect. But if it makes you feel better, then yeah, you're more likely to believe that, hey, this is real. That doesn't mean it's real. That's why there's something called a placebo effect. That's why they'll give the control group a pill that does nothing, because they know that you have to factor in the person's mind is as a part of like healing, or somebody thinking that they're healing, or whatever the case may be. All right, so certainty. I already said that pretty much. People like to be sure about things. People don't like to think that they don't know something. It's scary. You know what I mean? Like it's scary, and you have to be brave enough, like within yourself, to have the courage to face not knowing. Yeah, I'm not even gonna get into that, but not knowing is scary. I'm gonna just say that. I already talked about that a few different times before, so I'm not gonna get into that. So identity, yes. So yeah, like identity, politics, belonging, community, all those things. I think that some beliefs, well, obviously some beliefs become cultural. It's not that you actually believe something because you assess this information and you decided independently that it's a good thing to believe. No, that's not how it works. It's part of your identity. It's part of your culture. That's why you see, and I'm just using this as an example, because I mean, this is just an example I'm going to use. I'm not saying that this is a better example than anything else, but I was working in an area of Texas, let me just say, where they were, I guess, really Republican, and just the stuff that they would say, like this guy, he was excited the day that they broke into the Capitol. And then there was this girl that was working there, and she wasn't even white all the way, but she said Colin Kaepernick is a piece of shit. It was just like a hive mind type of situation. I just sat there and worked, you know what I mean? I didn't get into all that, because I know people are not really, it's kind of like this. If you notice, like, have you ever noticed like let's just say you're on Facebook or you're on Twitter or whatever, and you see somebody and they say something racist or like bigoted, and then you click on their profile, and then when you click on their profile, you either see a picture of like white Jesus or something, or you see like the American flag or like a bald eagle or something like that. Have y'all noticed that? That's because people kind of like throw all those ideas together. It's cultural. The white nationalism, or let's just say the nationalism, is cultural. It's part of like that, all kind of goes together. You know what I mean? It's part of the package. You know what I mean? It's, you know how when you dress up for Halloween, um let's just say you're dressing up as a firefighter. What does that come with? That comes with the hat, it comes with the boots, it comes with the jacket, come with the little fire hose and the fire hydrant. You know what I mean? If you want to have the complete outfit, and that's just how people's minds work. Their beliefs stop be they're not really something that's apart from them. It is actually a part of their identity, and if they're not able to like step back and assess information independently, then that's how you come up with like drones that just, I guess they feel like, I don't know, there's just a set of beliefs that they have to abide with, and if you don't, then you're not a good person. You know what I mean? Whatever. So reality is complicated. That means it's hard to understand. You have to work to understand it. Reality is uncertain, and we know people do not like uncertainty. Reality is nuanced, and people have a lot of issues with nuance. People like hard and fast rules. People like, yes, copy paste. People like to just say, okay, well, this is how this kind of person is at work, or people who drive this kind of car are like this. You know what I mean? Or people that have this kind of job, they are this kind of person. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Sure, there could be trends, there could be patterns, but at the same time, people really, when it comes to things like that, people simplify a lot because it's a shortcut in like their decision making. It's a shortcut in them deciding if they like somebody or not, if they're going to trust somebody or not, or if they can believe somebody or not. It's basically a lazy way of like assessing information. You don't want to really and you're not able to, as humans, like in the lives we live, we're not able to go through and be rational about every single thing. That's why we take mental shortcuts. That's why we have things called stereotypes. I'm not going to say that they don't serve any purpose at all, but I mean, clearly they are not 100% reliable. So that's why people like a lot of times have issues with reality. So people prefer certainty over accuracy. They would rather be sure. Well, I want to say sure, but yeah, they would rather have an answer. They don't need to know that the answer is right. I'm the type of person, I would rather, I actually like to be sure. You know what I mean? I don't know. I like to be sure. And I feel like if you're not sure, then you're not sure. But some people, if they have just a suggestion of an idea, they'll say, okay, well, I'll go with that. So yeah, I don't know is underrated. I don't know is underrated. Now, my ex, I'm just going to use him as an example. I think this person is a narcissist. I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist, nothing like that. But I honestly think this person is a narcissist. And I feel like this is a good test, right? Not even a test, but just observation wise. If you know somebody and they rarely say that they don't know, or they rarely say, well, I've never thought about it. You know what I mean? Then they might just be like a little, like, a little bit of a narc. If they won't say, you know what, I never thought about that. Actually, there might be something to that. Then they might not be that open-minded. I noticed one thing about my ex. He would never say, oh yeah, actually you're right about that. He would never say, oh, I don't know. He would never say, oh, you know what, I thought this, but I found out this. Some people are just like that. I don't know if it's an ego thing. It could be a self-esteem thing, like insecurity, but I don't trust a person that would not admit that they're wrong, or won't admit that they don't know something, because to me, that's the kind of person that's not a lifelong learner, and they're not honest, and they're not open to like, you know, genuine experiences and discourse. So um okay, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So we all know this one. But for some reason, y'all, why is it that it seems like the most extraordinary things, it's like people kind of accept them without any evidence at all? So it's like the more extraordinary the claim, the weaker the evidence. That's what it seems like to me. Because what evidence do you have that you can buy a spell on Etsy and that it's going to work? What evidence do you have that, like, I don't know, like whatever. I don't really get into all that. That's why I don't really know too many examples. I'm going to keep using the same examples like astrology or spell work, root work, whatever the case may be. Like, but it, when somebody, let's just say, buying a $5 spell on Etsy, because I was reading something about that on Lipstick Alley just now. I was like, what the fuck? But if you could do a spell to make something happen, why would you need to be on Etsy selling spells for $5? Like, you see what I mean? But somebody's gonna buy a spell off Etsy for $5 or however much they buy it, and not ask themselves, like, how do I know if it worked? So if it doesn't work, then what are you gonna do? Are you gonna ask for a refund? Like, what are we talking about? I know if I order something from Etsy, if I get here and it's made with what they said it's made out of, it's made by who they said it was made from, if it comes from wherever they said it came from and it's good quality, then I know that they fulfill what they're supposed to do. But if you buy a spell off Etsy for $5, then what? If it doesn't work, then what? Like, what do you say? Hey, this didn't work. Like, what? Like, okay, I just don't get it. Okay, so yeah, so it seems like but people doing it, and I think it's getting worse, honestly, Lena, because I feel like when I was younger, this isn't something that people took seriously. Like that Miss Cleo stuff, like that was a joke, you know what I mean? Like the craft, nobody thought that was real. But it seems like people are really getting into that these days, and they're leaving logic and reason behind, and that's the crazy part about it. When somebody will argue with you about a scientific fact, that where there's evidence available and easily accessible to prove a scientific fact or to support a scientific fact, but then they would promote something like astrology or tarot or whatever the case may be and have zero evidence, zero proof. It's crazy. Yeah. So logic is protective. Logic is not, it's not a bad thing. Like, it's a good thing. It protects you from scams. It protects you from being recruited into a cult. It protects you from medical misinformation, financial fraud, conspiracy theories. I know why. Now I know why I decided to talk about this today. I remember, I should say. There was this guy on Instagram, and I don't know if I saved the post, but that was this evening, just a little while ago, maybe a couple hours ago. I saw it. Maybe it was on a neighborhood talk or something like that. But what was he talking about? He was saying something about some kind of sacrifice, or somebody having ALS. It was because of a sacrifice. That's another thing. Oh my God, that is so aggravating when people talking about blood sacrifices and, oh, they sacrificed this person, and it's just, anyway. But my thing is this: for him to sit there, and I didn't even turn the sound on, but for him to sit in his car and just talk with that much like certainty and conviction, he cannot produce one shred of evidence. What type of evidence could you produce to say that somebody performed a blood sacrifice and that's why they later have ALS? People just like to talk, and I think it's because talking is easier than listening sometimes, you know what I mean? Or talking is easier than reading, you know what I mean? It's easier to make something up than to go out and find the truth. So for, yeah, and this is another thing that aggravates me about like pseudoscience, right? People will spend so much time and get so deep into it, and like memorize all these like rules or whatever, how this works in this house, with your sun and your moon and this whatever, uh whatever. They was put so much time into something that has zero support, like zero evidence. But then if you ask them about something scientific, like something basic, they can't answer you. They don't know anything about that because they didn't spend any time learning about the world around them. But they can recite to you all these facts of what they learned about, um you know whatever. Oh, whatever. I can't even, like I said, I can't even think of any examples of the foolishness that people are doing, the people that people are talking about. So yeah. um the purpose of logic. Okay, so logic is not, um I guess it could maybe, hopefully it doesn't seem egotistical or what's the word, arrogant. But the whole point of logic is to reduce the chance of you believing false things. That's literally the point. That's literally the point. Logic is not the enemy of anybody. You can't be mad at logic because it goes against, or it leads to a conclusion that goes against what you believe. The whole point of logic is to reduce the chance of you believing false things. I think a rational person would want to believe the truth. I can't think of any reason why you would want to be under the impression of something that's incorrect, unless you just, maybe you think about it like the Matrix or something like that. You just want to kind of look the other way and be happy. I don't know. But I mean, I'm pretty sure most rational people don't want to believe something that's not true. So just the beef that people have with science, it doesn't make sense to me because, like I said, the only objective of science is to get closer to truth. That's it. That's it. And make our lives better through what we learn, you know. Okay, so science is not just a collection of external facts, it's a method for gradually getting closer to reality. And I touched on this earlier when I say, you don't, education, you don't come away just with the ability to recite facts. That's not the point. The point is you want to become like the person who wrote the book. You know what I mean? You want to actually go out and be a person that discovers new information, and of course not everybody's going to do this, but it kind of reminds me of one time I was in math class. I don't even remember what class it was. I probably didn't pass it. I did not like I'm not a math type of person, and I definitely wasn't back then. But the professor, he said something like, because people always ask, why do they make us take all these classes and this doesn't have anything to do with your major. This is not anything that we're ever going to use again. Guess what he said? He said people wonder why they making, like, okay, let's just say you majoring in journalism. I think that maybe that's what I was majoring in at that time. The reason why they make everybody take like a certain level of basic classes in every area is because some people are going to get inspired by that. Like some person who was made to take a math class is going to decide that, hey, this is something that I'm really into. Somebody who is, was had to take a biology class or a chemistry class, they're going to decide, hey, this really sparks my imagination. If they just let people just go in there, let's just say if you're going, and that's another thing. Well, I don't want to sound like elitist or anything like that, so I'm not going to do that. But let's just say you're going to school to I don't know, whatever. I don't know, be a nurse. I don't know. I'm just using it as an example. I'm not saying things wrong with being a nurse. Well, no, that's a bad example. That's a bad example because that actually depends on a lot of stuff. So I'm just going to use journalism as an example because when I was younger, I wanted to be like a reporter or something like that. So let's just say you're going to school for journalism. You don't need to know about biology. You don't need to know about chemistry. You don't need to know about math. But the thing is, right, certain careers are glamorized. So let's just say you can see people on the news and you're like, okay, I love to read. I love to write, blah, blah, blah. I'm a good writer. You think, okay, I would look cute doing that, blah, blah. Those now journalism is very important. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, it's very important. And they have their own codes of ethics and all that kind of stuff like that. But as far as like things that make the world go round, not everything that like let's just say everything that we depend on, things around us that we use, those careers are not necessarily glamorized, but yet they are very they're vital, right? If everybody only wanted to do what they saw on TV, let's just say you want to be a basketball player or whatever like that. If you only want to do what you see on TV, then who's going to do all the stuff that actually needs to get done? So by you going and taking all these classes that have nothing to do with what you want to do, you get exposure to different ideas so that you can decide, like, after, being exposed to it, hey, is this something that I want to do? You know what I mean? They're not going to let you just go through and then decide, oh, well, no, I don't want to have anything to do with math. I don't want to have anything to do with biology. I don't want to have anything to do with history. You know what I mean? You, number one, you need a good background of everything. And number two, 99% of the people who go through any given like specific class might never care to see it again, but somebody is going to be inspired. It's going to click in somebody's mind and they could become like the next great mind in that field of study. So yeah, so that's the point of education, in my opinion. I'm not going to say like that's the point of education, but like, it's the point I'm trying to make is it's not just about being able to recite facts. Okay, so as far as changing conclusions in light of new evidence, I spoke about that briefly earlier. Yes, Lena, exactly. But the thing is, like, when you're young, you don't really know yourself that well. I mean, you can, but I mean, obviously, we change a lot. Like, my major was, well, I'm not gonna get into all that, but I changed my major quite a few times. I mean, I changed my major a few times, so you don't necessarily know yourself when you're that age. And um some people, and I'm not saying anything is wrong with this, but let's just say you grow up like in a rural town, your dad has like a hardware store or whatever, you get older, you take over the family business, and then your kid's going to do the same thing. That's an option for sure. But I mean, university, think about the word university, universal. You kind of, you're just exposing yourself to just general knowledge, as opposed to just being like on a road that somebody else carved for you, and you don't look left, you don't look right. You know what I mean? Yeah. So people that criticize science because information changes. Oh, well, back at this point in time, they thought this. Oh, in this year, they thought this. You can't trust that. It's one time a person said, "Can science be wrong?" And I think that was just a misunderstanding of like what science is and what the purpose of science is. So science is not a set of facts. That's not what science is. Science is a process. So can the knowledge that we gain through science be updated with new information? Yes, more information is always better. Well, for the most part, more information, more useful information is always better. So it's not that science was wrong. The process, it utilized and it incorporated information that was available at that time. So as we make new discoveries, as technology improves, we're able to access new information. Like, let's just say telescopes get better and better, you can see farther and farther, a microscope, whatever, you know what I mean? You're going to get new information. That's why it's always going to be a theory, and it gets supported with more and more and more information as you gain more information. Or if you get information that disproves it, that lets you know, hey, you need to throw it out. But it's never going to be a certainty. And the reason why I say theory and it's never going to be a 100% certainty is because we are always learning. We don't know everything. And in order to continue to learn, you have to be real with yourself and acknowledge that you don't know everything. You know very little, actually, in the grand scheme of things. And only by being humble that way is how you're actually going to learn more about the world around you. Because if we thought that we knew everything, then we wouldn't be learning anything, right? That's why, like, back when Galileo or whoever, they were looking at the stars and writing books saying, oh, I think actually, in fact, that the earth is not the center of the universe. oh well, let's go burn these books. Like, okay, you burning the book doesn't make it not true. You just don't want people to know. You don't want him to discover the information. So, and you don't want him to spread the information because it interferes with whatever your goal is, or whatever your objective is, or your what's the word I'm looking for? Can't think of the word, but you know what I mean. Um Whatever, I give up on trying to find a word, but y'all know what I mean. So my point is that there's no book of knowledge. Like, there's a book of like the results of science, or like collections of history and things like that, but um there is no like, there's nothing written in stone that cannot be crossed out, because the thing is, like, even when we think about the laws of physics, like the laws of physics, they explain a lot of things in the universe. They explain most of the things in the universe, but those laws break down when they start to examine like certain situations and certain conditions and extreme, you know what I mean, extreme conditions and stuff like that. Those don't necessarily work anymore, so therefore they're constantly I don't want to say constantly, but the goal is to continue to refine what we know so that we have a better explanation for how the world works. Hey Zero, thank you for coming by. Yeah, and so yeah, that's why I said you have to have humility if you're going to learn more, because if you don't want somebody to come along and discover that what you came up with is wrong, or that it can be improved upon, then you don't actually care about getting to the truth. What you care about is um I guess the glory, or your ego, or going down in history. That's what you care about. And that's the thing. Nothing's wrong with being wrong, because a long time ago a person might have had an idea about how this works, um but they might not have been 100% right. But the thing is, as time passes, people build upon what the people before them did, and they get closer and closer to the truth. So it's not bad that this person 500 years ago had this idea and it wasn't 100% right. If you think about like how germ theory started, or you know what I mean, like, because it or yeah, and I think germ theory, well, I'm not gonna get into all that. I'm gonna get into that maybe at a later date. um so yes, Lena, we do have a bunch of theories, but the reason, like I said, that they're called theories is that they are um it's because science is a process, and we are always open to new information. We're not going to toss something out because it ruins what we thought we knew. That's why it's a theory, because when we think about like the world around us, there's so much, like, we know a lot. Of course, we've learned a lot in the course of human history, but there's so much more that we don't know, that as we go out and learn more, it could completely turn something that we thought we knew on its head. But that's kind of the point. The point of science is not to get to a final answer. That would be nice, but as long as we continue and learn more about the world around us, then we'll never have a final answer. And that's why it's a theory, not because it's lacking in evidence. So okay, so yeah, so anyway, changing conclusions in light of new evidence is a feature of science, not a bug. It's not a problem. It doesn't mean that anything is wrong with the process of science. That's not what that means. The fact that our knowledge evolves, based on new information, that is actually a good thing. That lets you know that you're actually pursuing truth and knowledge, and instead of just trying to write, I guess, like a set of rules that we're supposed to just live with until the end of time. So skepticism is not cynicism. Healthy skepticism is not cynicism. It's not. Okay, so that's the thing. We have all these like things like climate change deniers, or like anti-vax. I'm not gonna get into all that because that's whatever. I'm not getting into all that. But when I say skepticism, I don't mean just you randomly saying like, okay, well, no, this is bad, and you don't have any evidence. Because people make up stuff and spread it on social media, and it's that's not healthy skepticism. Skepticism is asking yourself, okay, when you're confronted with a claim, what is the evidence for this? So when somebody says, hey, um whatever. I don't know. I'm going to keep using the same examples because, like I said, I don't get into all that. When somebody says a Capricorn is this way, blah, blah, blah. Okay, what's the evidence? How was this tested? Could there be another explanation? For example, if you keep telling Aries that they're crazy, then maybe they're going to act crazy, So could there be other explanations? And what would change your mind? You have to be able to kind of step outside of the situation and say, hey, can you imagine something that would change your mind? If you can't imagine anything so let's just say, if I say, okay, so let's just say I believe in, well, I'm trying to see what's a good example. Okay, I know that, like, or let's just say, and I know that my ex, he was Nigerian, but he said that they used to think that twins were evil, and if they had twins, they would kill them or kill one of them or something like that. I don't know, but like, let's just say you heard that, you believe that, and that's why you think that. Is there a scenario in which you would change your mind? What would have to happen for you to change your mind? If nothing could happen that would cause you to change your mind about what you believe, then that means you are limiting yourself. Yeah, that's crazy, right? You're not actually open to gaining knowledge. You are stuck in a pattern of dogma, and whatever it is that you believe is serving something other than a quest for knowledge. It's serving your ego, it's serving your conscience, is serving your comfort, whatever, is assuaging your fears, is doing something else. Is the whole is not to get you closer to truth. So if you can't think of anything that would prove something wrong to you, if you can't think of anything that would get you to change your mind, then that's a good clue that you're not really in it for like the right reason. So and all right, I'm now reached the end. We do not owe every idea equal respect. So, now as far as respecting somebody's beliefs, okay, yeah, you can respect their right to hold their beliefs, but you don't have to respect their beliefs. You don't. Ideas earn respect by surviving evidence. So just because you believe something, that does not mean it's worthy of respect. If whatever your belief is can hold up to like evidence, logic, criticism, then yes, your idea has earned respect. But if you believe something just because you believe it, then what's the respect? That's like kind of like the difference between like earning a position, right, based on like your merit or your experience versus like nepotism. If somebody just gives you a position, you know what I mean? If you're or like a monarchy, if you're born and you're the first son, then you're just going to be the king. That's it. Doesn't mean you're better than anybody else. Nothing. It just means you were the shoe-in. They just, from the moment you were born, they said you were going to be the king. Doesn't mean you're better than anybody else. Doesn't mean you're smarter than anybody else. Doesn't mean you're a kinder person. Nothing. It just means that, this is just what they were going to do, and that was already decided before you were born. So yeah, I'm only using that as like an analogy, just to basically say that like you believe in something doesn't make it worthy of respect. Ideas that are worthy of respect are the ones that are supported by evidence. They stand up to evidence. They stand up to logic. They stand up to criticism. If you're afraid of evidence, if you're afraid of logic, if you get mad at criticism, then that lets you know that what you're standing on shaky ground. You know that whatever it is that you believe is going to fall in light of those things. So that's actually how my beliefs evolved over time, because at first I was afraid of things that did not support what I was taught to believe, but at the same time, like being me trying to be a logical person, I said, hey, well, guess what, if something is the truth, then it can't be disproven. It's going to stand up to whatever it is whatever research that I do and whatever I find. If it's not the truth, that's the only way it can be disproven. You see what I mean? Me seeking out more information about something, if it leads me farther away from whatever that belief was, then that lets you know that that belief was not a justifiable belief, period. So that's how I was able to become more comfortable with the idea of exploring ideas outside of like what I was taught like from a child. Yeah, because if I tell you, for example, um I don't have a treasure in the closet, but just don't go look in the closet. For example, like something that's a terrible analogy. But what I'm saying is, if I go in a closet and I find a gold treasure, or whatever, a treasure chest full of gold, am I gonna still say, well, you know what? He said he doesn't have a treasure, so I guess I should just believe it. Or am I gonna be afraid to open the closet door and look because I'm scared of what I'm gonna see? You see what I mean? Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, you're not, put it like this. God gave you a brain. Like, if you're a religious person, God gave you a brain, God gave you reasoning, God gave you a mind, he gave you reasoning abilities, and he would not give you any of those things if you weren't supposed to use them. So yeah, using God as an excuse to not use your common sense or not use your reasoning faculties or logic, that's actually would be doing that would actually be doing yourself a disservice, and that would be kind of spitting on the gifts that God gave you. So okay, education does not fill our heads with facts. It should teach us how to distinguish reality from comforting fiction. The moment we stop asking, how do I know this is true? How do I know this is true? The moment you stop asking that is the moment that you become vulnerable to believe almost anything. And like I said, I'm not the type of person to argue with somebody about their beliefs, but you know, anytime, like when you hear people say, well, yeah, I know you don't believe in astrology, but I don't care, or whatever the case may be, I guess they're doing it because it's fun at that point. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know why people waste their time with things that they pretty much know deep down are not true. I don't know. But yeah, you should be able to ask yourself. And that's the whole idea of empiricism. I didn't really get technical in this video, but for the longest time I didn't know the name of like what I was trying to describe. I just would say, well, I'm all about science. You know what I mean? Like, to me, everything falls into two categories. It's either supported by science, or it's either based in reality, or it's not. And I don't really have any pseudoscientific beliefs. Like, I don't, because to me, once I hear about something, the first thing I want to know is, like, is this a real thing? Like, is this supported by science? Have there been studies on these kinds of things? Is this something that's taken seriously by the mainstream? If not, like, I'm not really interested in it. Yeah, so if you're not able to rationalize to yourself, or you're not able to explain to yourself or justify to yourself why you believe something is true, and with that being based on like evidence and logic, then you're just gassing yourself up. That's it. So that is all I had to say, y'all. I didn't expect to like be up here long. It's only been like an hour and a half, and really I wasn't expecting for anybody to come up either. The only reason I even went on StreamYards is so I could play my little song at the beginning and at the end, because I don't really know what I'm doing. So I just need to know how y'all doing all that fancy stuff on your lives. I don't know, because you see, I done had a blank screen up here the whole entire time. I don't know. So maybe one day I'll figure it out. I want to do better, but yeah, that's all it is for now. Maybe I'll take like a class on I don't know, some website or something like that. I don't know, maybe. But anyway, everybody who came through, thank you for coming through. I'm glad that this wasn't a rant. It was about to be a rant, and it was going to be disrespectful as hell. But I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't feel like turning up. It's too hot. Something's wrong with my air conditioner. I need to put in a work request, but I need to clean up too. So it's I don't have time for all that tonight. And once again, there's some other stuff that I wanted to talk about, which is like what I was going to talk about today. Yeah, I might not even waste my time talking about that. I don't know. Just some straight foolishness. I also wanted to talk about something I talked about before, which is like just the mind of a predator. Lena, yeah, I didn't. It's too hot. I want to talk about the mind of a predator and how like it has nothing to do with like access, and it's just something inside of these people that makes them act the way that they do. They just want to be on the hunt. I want to talk about that. I do want to get more in depth talking about like empiricism, which is, basically how do we know what we know, you know? Um just, talking about like how to assess different claims and how to decide if something is science or pseudoscience. And the thing is, you have a right to believe what you want to believe. Everybody got a right to believe what they want to believe. But if you're going to believe something that's not supported by science, I think you at least have the right to know that that's what you're actually doing. If you still choose to believe it for whatever personal reason after that, then that's fine. But you just still want to give yourself the best chance at making the right decision. So yeah, there's nothing logical about it, but it's definitely in some people. And I'm talking about being a predator. So what else did I want to talk about? I don't know. There's some other stuff that I wanted to talk about, but I may not get to all of that stuff. I don't even know if I'm gonna talk about what I wanted to talk about today. Which was I'm gonna save that for another video. But yeah, I think I'm gonna split my channel up, y'all. And I'm probably just gonna like stream on multiple channels at first, you know what I mean? But I think I'm about to have like 4 different channels because I just need some organization over here. There's too much going on over here. But y'all, thank y'all for coming through. It is 11:27 where I'm at. I'm about to get off here and get ready to go to bed because I gotta go to work tomorrow. But I'm only working a half a day tomorrow, so I'm gonna have an extra long weekend because we get another day off because 4th of July fall on the weekend. So I'm off on Friday, but now I work a half a day tomorrow. But thank y'all for coming through. So I might go live again this weekend, talk about some more random stuff. But y'all have a good night, and I'm gonna play my song again before I get out of here. Good night, Lena. Good night, everybody that came through. And I'm gonna see y'all around.
Nothing but the same for me. Heartbroken into where my brain should be. Wait for me. Don't leave without a second glance. Not again. Oh, what a shame, what a shame. Oh, what a shame, what a shame. Oh, what a shame, what a shame. God's gone, God's gone, God's gone. God's gone, God's gone, God's gone. For once, can you listen? Is that too much to ask for? Before the seasons change, before it gets cold, can you at least pretend? Can you at least pretend? Life of a pessimist, only a fool believes there is a God in the sky who listens to the plea of his child. How could he leave us all alone? How could he leave us all alone? Oh, what a shame, what a shame. Oh, what a shame, what a shame. Oh, what a shame, what a shame. God's gone, God's gone, God's gone. God's gone, God's gone, God's gone. For once, can you listen? Is that too much to ask for? Before the seasons change, before it gets cold, can you at least pretend? Can you at least pretend?
Can you listen? Is that too much to ask for? Before the seasons change, before it gets cold, can you at least pretend? Can